Well, thank you all very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm trying to remember how many years I've been invited to come and chair MetroRail, but it's quite a few times now, and it's a great pleasure to be back again. It is always one of my favourite conferences to take part in this. It's a real melting pot for the urban railway industry. And to try and set the scene a little bit this morning, this year, 2 months ago, we celebrated the 150th birthday of the world's oldest metro. We kind of think of metros as a modern technology, but we've been around almost as long as there have been railways. And I just thought, well, what have we learned in that 150 years that we can use to go forward for the next, I won't say the next 150, but certainly the next couple of decades. And I've tried to break down that 150 years. If you think of metro technology in a 30 to 40 year life cycle, it's fairly typical for rolling stock and equipment. The first 40 years was very much about understanding that metros are not the same as mainline railways. You don't just take a mainline railway and put it underground. That's not what it's all about. And it was after that 40 years later, that we sort of came onto electric traction, optimising the metro as we now understand it, operating practices, intensive services, getting the concept right. And then the third 40 years was actually about expanding that into the major cities of the world, particularly the Western world, and fine-tuning. And then the last 30 to 40 years, we've seen a proliferation of metros all over the world, emerging countries, new cities, the mega trends, global urbanisation, quality of life issues coming to the fore. And that's really where we are now. Whether we're still in that fourth age or we're moving into a fifth age is maybe something we want to debate as we go along. But the challenges I see for the next few years, this continuing process of urbanisation, we've now, 5-10 years since we got to the point where half the world's population live in cities. Demand for public transport, for urban transport, is growing. Cities don't function without good transport, and elected mayors, city authorities around the world are rapidly recognising transport is up there with health, with water, with these other major issues if their city is to function and be competitive in the global environment. In the Western countries, we have the issue of ageing populations, we have financial challenges. Being pioneers with metros, we've got a lot of old technology that needs to be modernised, we haven't got the resources to do it. An older population needs different issues. We have things like accessibility, the challenge of coping with growing expectations from customers. Affluence brings expectations, brings better quality of life. Focus on door-to-door journeys, connectivity, connecting up, tying together all these different transport modes into an integrated network. In the emerging markets, it's still very much about new cities growing. Can we build metro networks? Can we afford them? How do we finance them? How do we, if you like, prevent the emerging countries from making the same mistakes that we made 50 to 100 years ago? And this kind of exchange of information between countries, between cities, is so critical to learning and sharing that experience. And I've come up with a couple of key phrases: that putting the metro at the heart of the city and putting the customer at the heart of the metro. And that's what we're going to start to talk about this morning, in this morning's session of integrated urban transport. And really that's the message I want to give as chairman for this morning's session, is how do we put the metro at the heart of the city and the customer at the heart of the metro. And with that, having said that, where better to start than where we started 150 years ago, which is London. And so, for our first speaker this morning, I'm delighted to welcome on stage Howard Smith, originally from Transport for London, London Rail, now the Operations Director for Crossrail, who's going to come and tell us a little bit about how we're changing the shape of London's transport network. So Howard, would you like to join me up here?